Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I say Hare Krishna, and on this beautiful, somewhat hot morning, we continue studying the Srimad Bhagavatam with you. Canto 4, Chapter 16. The singers glorify King Pṛthu. Text 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. No one will dare disobey the order of Mahārāja Pṛthu. Having conquered the whole earth, he will free its inhabitants from the threefold miseries and become famous throughout the world. His glory will be so great that his noble influence will be sung by the suras and asuras. Wow. Well, simply put, suras and asuras means demons and demigods. The fact is that Pṛthu Mahārāja will amaze everyone and also subdue everyone. And when it says here conquered, that is putting it strongly because, as we read, when he toured his dominions, that is, no less than the entire planet, then all these vassal kings brought him offerings, gifts. Their wives too, you remember, sang, danced, glorified him. So there may have been, as they say, some petty, bandits, robbers, whom he of course immediately put in their place. So that is why it says here, no one will dare disobey. That is, of course, all kinds of bandits immediately submitted, meaning to Pṛthu Mahārāja. And so by and large, there was really no one for him to fight. And this once again shows the king's power. It clearly says here, the very first thing it begins with, no one will dare disobey the order. But now everyone who feels like it, disobeys orders. There's even a saying, not caught, not a thief. You understand? That is, if they did not catch you and you disobeyed, everything is fine. And these, so to speak, sayings and this very behavior arise because of the weakness of the government. And now it would seem there is a whole government, that is a whole brigade, made up of hundreds and thousands of people, and it would seem that this is power compared to just one person. That is, a king is one person. But here we have a government, hundreds and thousands of people, and it would seem, this surely must be better. This once again confirms, all that glitters is not gold. And so it is better not the way it seems to us or the way we feel, but better the way the scriptures say. That is one thing. And secondly, the scriptures say that under a king, as it says here, the people were freed from the threefold miseries. By the way, yesterday I brought up this topic in connection with Durga. It is she, in quotation marks, who rewards every sinner, godless person with these threefold miseries. But under a king, Durga has nothing to do, because we also discussed devotional service yesterday, you understand. So here too, everyone was engaged in devotional service, and therefore Durga was relaxing on the beach. Well, just a little, of course. Durga will always find someone to pierce, you understand? For example, on other planets where there were less righteous kings like Vena, for example. Well, never mind that Durga. The fact is that under King Pṛthu there are not even the threefold miseries. This is one man, one person. But now there are hundreds and thousands of rulers, and everyone only languishes under these threefold miseries, including the rulers themselves. All you see on the internet is people crying, complaining about the government, about the laws, and I say, why cry? Why complain? Tears will not help trouble. You understand? One simply needs, as we read and discussed yesterday, to take up devotional service and stop sinning. That is the solution to all problems in our time. That is, what was then done under the careful guidance and supervision of the authorities, that is, the king, now can and must be done by every citizen, if of course he wants to get rid of suffering. But people only have enough spirit to record a video message. There. And I say that tears will not help trouble, no matter how much you cry in that video. These demon rulers do not care. They do not even watch those videos. They are drowning in their power, in wealth, in enjoyment. They have no concern for human tears, you understand? Therefore, all these video appeals, audio appeals, when you look at them, it is like little children. That is, seemingly grown people are standing there, even old men and old women, but their intelligence is like that of children, you understand? This once again confirms that modern civilization produces idiots, a flock of sheep that understands absolutely nothing and turns for help, for support, with a request to solve the problem to the very people who created that problem. You understand? Yes, what human stupidity. That is, they can stand for hours recording useless videos instead of using that same time to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and begin following the 4 principles. That would truly change the state of affairs in a person's life. For everyone. Everything in genius is simple. Everyone who follows, everyone who chants, his life changes, you understand? This is what concerns our time, because here, as we have already discussed, all people do is disobey orders, laws. Therefore, in our time, no one believes in these laws and orders anymore. People simply look for a way to break them, to, as they say, cover their tracks. And that is it. The job is done. No one is afraid. By the way, that's exactly why all the prisons are overcrowded. That is exactly why all the hospitals and morgues are overcrowded. You understand? Because people are afraid of nothing and no one. You understand? Because the government is weak. And why is it weak? Because it is sinful. As Prabhupada said, and naturally the scriptures also say, purity is strength. And here we see what purity does. A pure devotee, everyone feared him. But since modern rulers are sinners, that is, filth, simply put, shit, they have no power at all. They do not even have the strength to protect themselves, their very own selves, and therefore they fight with one another. You understand? Wars do not cease, here and there all over the planet, sometimes hot, sometimes cold. Because there is no strength, that is, there is no purity, and therefore everything they say or do always brings only suffering. Absolutely. We also see how everyone was obedient, and as a result the inhabitants were free from the threefold miseries. You understand? Plus all this was seen, everyone saw it, and therefore they glorified Pṛthu, both asuras, that is demons, and suras, that is demigods. That is, King Pṛthu entered everyone's heart. This, once again, I say, purity, is strength, that he conquered the hearts not only of the demigods but also of the demons. That is, even the demons recognized the greatness, might, strength, and purity of Pṛthu Mahārāja. That is, as we already discussed yesterday, King Pṛthu had complete victory on this planet. That is, he quickly put everything back in its place after that negligent King Vina. There, of course, as we read, robbers and thieves raised their heads, so it is impossible to call this a war. It says here conquered, but in reality all he had to do was put in place some little bunch of bandits, robbers, and so on, which was no trouble for him at all, you understand? So the text, or rather the purport, in the time of Mahārāja Pṛthu, the whole world was ruled by one emperor, to whom many vassal states were subordinate. Like modern federations, in ancient times the world consisted of separate states, but all of them were subject to one emperor. When in any one of them the principles of varṇāśrama were violated, the emperor immediately took the reins of government into his own hands. And the words Utpatita Loka Shalya indicate that Mahārāja Pṛthu freed his subjects from all suffering. Shalya means a sharp thorn or prickle. The path of human life is strewn with thorny sufferings, but powerful rulers in Vedic times, up to the reign of Mahārāja Yudhishthira, could free their subjects from these sufferings. It is known that when Mahārāja Yudhishthira ruled the world, people did not suffer from excessive cold or scorching heat, and did not know what anxiety and worry were. This is the sign by which one can distinguish a good king from a bad one. Yes, by the way, this is what even those so-called, what do they call them, scientists confirm. Somehow they calculated it, I don't know how anymore, but the fact is that even they say that in the past, the whole planet had summer. Yes, now people think, say India, summer all year round, a good country, or say Florida where I live, that is one state also considered a good sort of country, meaning state, well, place, a good place, summer all year round. Well, but first one must understand that even though it is summer here, what about hurricanes? When a hurricane comes, everyone does nothing but leave this beloved Florida. Heh, you understand? So by and large, everything here is poisoned. I mean enjoyment. You want summer? Fine, you will have summer, but with the constant fear of a hurricane, tornado, and so on. So in our time, there is no peace anywhere at all, in the full sense. Therefore, it is useless to compare anything with that time. But back then, the whole planet truly had summer all year round, that is, good weather, as Prabhupada writes here. They did not know what anxiety and worry were, you understand? That is, the threefold suffering was absent, you understand? That is, life then differed little from life in the spiritual world, because when a person does not feel the threefold miseries, he is practically already in a spiritual body. You understand? Of course, in the end they all died, but they lived happily, without fear, without disease, epidemics, with good weather. They had no idea what hurricanes or wars or radiation were, you understand? It was a spiritual life that differed little from the spiritual world, and therefore it is not surprising that everyone was grateful to King Pṛthu, both demons and asuras, meaning demigods. Next we read, "This is the sign by which one can distinguish a good king from a bad one." Mahārāja Pṛthu provided his subjects with a peaceful and tranquil life. Therefore his great deeds were glorified by the inhabitants not only of the heavenly but also of the hellish planets. People or entire nations striving to spread their influence throughout the world must certainly remember this. Only one who is capable of putting an end to the threefold miseries of his subjects has the right to claim world dominion. In seeking power, a person must under no circumstances pursue any kind of political or diplomatic goals. Yes, and we have already discussed many times that modern rulers could not care less about the interests of the people. They, just want their own power, and that is all. Therefore, as soon as a person reaches power, he immediately begins simply reveling in that power, plundering, stealing from his own people, or if possible, from the whole planet. This is exactly where wars come from. Wars do not arise because the people there somehow had some dispute with another people. Like, for example, now there is the war of Iraq or Iran with America. And as for the people, the American people cannot even point to that country on a map. That is, the people do not care at all where Iraq is or what they are doing there. Absolutely. Yet the war goes on. Why? This is exactly what Prabhupada explains here. They pursue political or diplomatic goals, that is, intoxication with their own power. And this once again shows that rulers do not care about their own people. If these rulers truly loved their people, they would never in their lives start these political or diplomatic wars, which have absolutely nothing to do with the people. The same applies to those very Iranians or Iraqis. They have no idea at all what America is or what Americans are. They live somewhere there in their desert. They do not even have electricity. It is the 17th century. They are all still walking around in burqas and so on. They do not care about the American people. They have more than enough problems of their own. That is as far as the people are concerned, you understand? But wars go on. By the way, the same with the Russia-Ukraine war. As for the people, they lived together for centuries. A husband from Ukraine, a wife from Russia, or vice versa. Children are born half Russian, half Ukrainian, and no one is any better or worse off because of it. It is the normal state of things. Likewise, in the Second World War, Russians and Ukrainians drove Hitler all the way to Berlin together. This is a people that lived together for centuries and lived without trouble. And I lived in Kherson and in Kharkov and in Belgrade and in Moscow and in Rostov. So I know the life of both sides. Besides, I traveled and preached. I know that the people there are the same people. But again, Prabhupada says, in seeking power, they pursue their own political or diplomatic goals. And therefore, because of these politicians and diplomats, Russia, or rather Russians, hate Ukrainians and Ukrainians hate Russians, you understand? That is, this is artificial hatred created by diplomats and politicians, you understand? That's why at the very beginning I said that modern civilization, the people, is a flock of sheep. Whatever they are told from above, they take it all at face value, you understand? Like, for example, Americans are told that Iraq is our enemy. That is it. They took it at face value. They did not even examine whether it was so or not. And likewise, the Russians were told, that is it, Ukrainians are our enemies. And they all also took it at face value without even examining whether it was so or not, because they are a flock of sheep, you understand? And all this happens, as is explained here, because demons are in power, and therefore people experience the threefold suffering all their lives. Yes, all their lives. Born, he screams, cries, and dies, pissing himself at the sight of the Yamadutas, you understand? That is how the life of any modern person in any country passes. And after death, as usual, he falls into hell accompanied by the Yamadutas and pays for his sins. Do you catch the difference? Under King Pṛthu, people did not even know what the threefold suffering was, except perhaps from books. You understand? That is, they lived practically in the spiritual world, because only in the spiritual world do the threefold miseries not exist. So, therefore I say they lived practically in the spiritual world. But now people cannot even imagine a second without suffering. Every second something happens. Now the leg hurts, now the arm hurts, now the head hurts, now everything altogether hurts, now prices are rising, now bombs are falling, now there is a shortage of this, a shortage of that. People experience nothing but suffering. And despite all this, they do not want to surrender to Krishna. And that means only one thing, that people will continue to suffer further, like cats and dogs, that is, like animals, you understand? And on that positive note, we will finish this verse. But also, as it turns out, this is also the end of chapter 16. Yes, no wonder it is said, however long the rope may twist, the end will always come. And so today we have, that is verse 27, and I did not even suspect that this was the end, because usually there are more verses in the chapters, 40, 50, like that. But for there to be 27 verses, and already the whole chapter, that is, of course, a rare case. Therefore, for me, this is pleasant news, a pleasant event, that right now before your eyes we have a graduation, chapter 16. Yes, we, pigeons, have finished studying Canto 4, chapter 16 together. The singers glorify King Pṛthu. Wonderful. And tomorrow we will begin chapter 17, which is called Mahārāja Pṛthu becomes angry with the earth. Yes, and beginning with this 17th chapter, there will start the description of all those deeds that were sung of Pṛthu, sung of King Pṛthu. You understand? That is, here they sang in the 16th. But in the 17th, the king will already get down to business. That is, we will already see with our own eyes how what they sang of came to pass in reality. You understand? And I want to repeat once again that these songs of praise that the singers were doing, this is not some Atsibyatina. They heard it through parampara from spiritual teachers. And Prabhupada explained this, that though they were singers, it was no Atsibyatina. They did not compose the verses and songs and so on by themselves. They sang what their spiritual teachers told them about King Pṛthu. This is called parampara. Therefore, every deed that they sang of in their songs, now it will come to pass. Yes, this is just one more distinguishing sign of modern rulers as opposed to the rulers of that time, that now a ruler is advertised. So good, so good. An angel descended, yes? But as soon as he reached power, he immediately showed his true face, that he is a demon and never was an angel. You understand? This is called deception. Or I would say window dressing. Well, or at the very least, ass-wiping. You understand? Lies, in short. People are lied to just to gain power, and having gained power, they use people as expendable material. And on that, excuse the expression, positive note, once again, I congratulate you on graduation. Once again, we, that is, have dropped another chapter into our piggy bank, the 16th. Wonderful. And tomorrow is September 1st. Right now we are in August at the beginning, and tomorrow it will already be September 1st, that is, chapter 17. Today we have the graduation of chapter 16, and tomorrow we have September 1st of chapter 17. That is how it is. Hare Krishna.